The most evil mother in America. The youngest of 4 children, Teresa Knorr was born in Sacramento on March 12, 1946. Jim adopted Swanee's stepchildren, William and Clara. Teresa and Rosemary followed. Jim manufactured cheese, and Swanee worked in forestry, making the family comfortable. Swanee's money assisted the family in the 1940s when many women didn't work. Jim Knorr's late 1950s Parkinson's halted their Sacramento run. This awful situation prevented Jim from making cheese. While the family lived, Jim's declining health kept him home. Jim hated his family when he was sick. Innocent individuals living a life Jim could no longer live shocked Jim. Jim hits his kids out of jealousy and bitterness over his Parkinson's, hurting the Knorrs. Jim's illness and Swanee's family issues exhausted her. Stress impedes motherhood. Swanee tripped and died in March 1961 while walking to the market with her youngest daughter, Teresa. Knorr's deteriorated after Swanee died of congestive heart failure. Teresa Knorr mourned her mother Swanee's untimely death. Without her mother, Teresa suffered. Teresa's mourning strained the family. In her room, she sought peace. The family lost their home after Swanee's death owing to finances. Teresa was delicate at 15 or 16. Her first love comforted Teresa amid this adjustment. For love, Teresa married Clifford in 3 months. Teresa found it difficult because Clifford made her happy. After high school, Clifford, 21, moved to Teresa. Clifford gained trust. After this terrible relationship, Teresa's marriage to Clifford was vital and emotional. Teresa married Clifford 6 months after meeting him. Teresa's emotional immaturity ruined her first romance. Teenage anxieties and emotions sometimes enraged her. Teresa's lies about adultery and emotional abuse terminated their relationship. She committed too quickly, therefore we didn't get along. Teresa reconciled with Clifford after her 18th pregnancy. Their blissful first pregnancy changed their relationship. Their complicated relationship changed in 1962, when Teresa had their first child. A year after Howard's birth, the Sanders family faced fresh challenges. Teresa reported Clifford's assault to police. A few days later, Teresa convinced the police to drop all Clifford claims without explanation, following a lengthy investigation. Her dramatic metamorphosis strained their volatile relationship. The couple's violent cycle and brief tranquility ended tragically on Clifford's 25th birthday in July 1964. Clifford rejoiced with friends after a heated argument turned into adultery claims. Tired of conflict, Teresa reacted to Clifford's leaving. Teresa panicked and shot her husband in the back with a nearby rifle to stop him from leaving. Teresa had to face her recklessness as their sad relationship peaked. The cops found Teresa after she shot Clifford. She was accused of murdering her spouse. Not murder. Teresa claimed manslaughter. Clifford, a loud alcoholic, started the fight that terrible night, she recalled. She accidentally fired the revolver, worried he would hurt her. To regret her act's unforeseen consequences, Teresa labeled it a horrible accident. The evidence contradicts Teresa's domestic violence-related accidental gunshot count. Clifford was shot in the rear as he approached menacingly, casting doubt on her self-defense claim. Teresa never reported domestic violence, casting doubt on her fears. Teresa's family and friends reported that she was possessive and dominating, contradicting her assertion that Clifford was unpleasant. With Sheila, Teresa Clifford's death jury evidence upset the sister. Taverns introduced her to U.S. Estelle Thornberry, Army veteran. Teresa rapidly and strongly connected with Estelle. Like in prior relations despite her military swimming, Teresa liked Estelle. Teresa comforted paraplegic Estelle after the accident. Estelle and Teresa bonded despite his grief. Various lives shaped Teresa and Estelle's connection. Nightly pub visits by Teresa separated Estelle from her 2 children. Estelle cared for Teresa's disabled kids. Her frequent drunken visits home sparked strife. Teresa twisted Estelle's pain. Estelle's demanding career and lifestyle foresaw the couple's problems. Teresa lacked stability. Days went by without calling her then partner, Estelle. Teresa cheated with Estelle's boyfriend, Robert Knorr. The discovery ended her relationship with Estelle, letting her start over with Robert. Robert quickly married Teresa and became her stepfather. Violence-filled relationships caused blood. Despite the chaos, Teresa and Robert had Susan, William, and Robert in 2 years. The toxic relationship demonstrated Teresa's terrible partnership. Infidelity and violence plagued Teresa and Robert. Robert divorced in 1970 to de-stress. Teresa revealed her pregnancy to salvage her marriage. Robert divorced and sought custody while pregnant. Teresa, outraged, forbade him from seeing their kids, commencing a custody fight. Teresa's sixth child was Terry. She became mean again after marrying railway worker Ronald Pulliam, her third husband. Exhausted, Ronald divorced again. Friendly fourth husband, Chester Harris. Chester treated Teresa's 6 kids well. Despite Teresa's harshness, Chester brought the kids out and gave them gifts to bond over. He worked and supported Teresa's family, especially her children, making him her best partner. Stepfather Chester's Susan affair ended Teresa's 4th marriage. Teresa was jealous of Susan and Chester's closeness, generating conflict. Chester was devoted until Teresa saw his stunning naked photos. Teresa misinterpreted his adultery and divorce. A single mother of 6, Teresa ignored her appearance and self-esteem while her alcoholism wrecked her. Due to her mental decline, Teresa Gnar became upset with her daughters, Susan and Sheila, in adolescence. Teresa victimized them for attention. Insecurity drove Teresa away, hurting the family financially. Neighbors said that Gnar's 1-bedroom flat smelled and was dirty. Teresa Gnar's mental health plummeted after her older sister, Rosemary, died unexpectedly. Grief drove her attacks on Susan and Sheila. Rivalry, force-feeding, and maltreatment damaged sisters. The murder of her sister Rosemary made Teresa Gnar more aggressive due to mental instability. Teresa's abuse and family isolation were nightmares. Her daughter, Susan, recovered rapidly. Teresa didn't look for her daughter. Police suspected the Gnars of neglect and apathy after finding Susan on a road. After Susan didn't flee, Teresa informed authorities her daughter's accusations were mental illness and needed medical attention. Teresa mistreated me more at home. When leather gloves wore her out, Susan made her kids continue. Her cruel mother made her siblings protect Susan under the kitchen table for 2 years. Susan went 2 years without food or drink at the kitchen table. Dehydrated and hungry, she suffered. Teresa beat her kids hard one July 1984 night. Teresa released Susan and gave her youngest daughter, Terry, a gun to shoot her if she escaped. Different sources say Teresa or Terry shot Susan in the back later that day. Teresa's 18-year-old daughter, Susan Gnar, was mistreated. Evil Teresa's boys stole Susan's stuff and drenched her in gasoline before burning her in a distant spot. A witness mistook the horrific image for a forest fire the next day. To identify the charred victims, police tried. Susan lost dental records due to Teresa's refusal to see a doctor, making this terrible crime tougher to solve. Susan was declared a Jane Doe after the morgue failed to identify her. After the autopsy, investigators couldn't solve the brutal murder. The physical abuse, large ovarian tumor, and soot in Susan's lungs, indicating she was burned alive, were concerning. No victim data was found in public leads by officials. The morgue was packed. Therefore, fingerprints and dental data were saved. But the case was unsolved. Although Teresa remained unpunished, Susan's death stopped her violence. Soon, she found a new victim for her oldest daughter, Sheila. Though untied, Sheila was thrashed harder than Susan. The more frequent beatings, and then Teresa got another idea. As we know, the family was struggling a lot financially, and struggling is an understatement. They were barely eating because all of the government aid that they were getting was going straight on alcohol. They could barely afford their home. They could barely afford anything, absolutely anything, and Teresa was drinking more and more. These days, the more she got into her addiction, the more it took to kind of get her to the same drunkenness as she once was, and so she was drinking Maramara Mom. When he was going on alcohol, money was getting tighter than it ever was, and they needed to find a way to make something. And that's where Sheila came in. Teresa started forcing her daughter into prostitution to be able to make a bit of money for the family, of course. When she first mentioned this to Sheila, she begged her mother not to go through with it. She said that she could go out and find a job elsewhere. She didn't need to do that, but her mother was adamant. And at the end of the day, what Teresa said goes. Ultimately, Sheila and all of the other kids knew they never had a choice in the matter, in any matter. Whatever Teresa wanted, she was gonna get otherwise. She would kill them the way that she did with Susan. The kids were so terrified of her. Now they'd always been so scared of her. But now she killed one of them. The kids were literally doing anything and everything they said out of fear for their lives now. So this began. Sheila was forced into prostitution. And at first, she absolutely hated it. Of course, wouldn't you? But as time went on, She started to realize that this could actually be her way out of this abusive household potentially, so the way that this would go, I believe, was that Sheila was allowed to leave the house to go and pick up clients, of course. She'd need to go and stand on road corners and whatever, she'd have to go down to specific areas to be able to pick, or for men to be able to pick her up. And of course, Teresa couldn't go with her. That would be weird, so Sheila would go out, she would do her job, and then the men would give the money directly to Sheila. After Teresa forced her into prostitution, Sheila collected money to escape her violent family. Teresa chastised Sheila more for her STI. Delusional Teresa locked Sheila in a small, unventilated cupboard, denying her food, water, and bathroom access. As Sheila's health weakened, her siblings helped her covertly. Teresa stopped the one-bedroom flat kids from feeding Sheila in the cabinet. Teresa caught Sheila's supporters and promised punishment. Sheila suffered alone since the kids were afraid to help. Terry, the youngest, struggled but gave Sheila a beer to break the silence. Teresa needed validation and accountability, so Terry offered to release Sheila if she took responsibility for the STI. When Sheila ignored her apologies, Teresa suffered. Teresa blamed Sheila for her STI. Terry offered to confess and escape, but Sheila declined. Teresa neglected Sheila's thirst and hunger for days. A massive bomb on June 21, 1985, halted cabinet cries. The family hesitated to open the cabinet due to Teresa's high expectations. The foul stench led them to Sheila's corpse 3 days later. He tortured and killed Susan and Sheila in a two-room California house. They decayed faster in California's heat, showing Teresa's brutality and neglect. After Terry, the youngest sibling, reported the crimes, DNA testing identified the victims. Teresa's sons, William and Robert, revealed their awful involvement, placing her in Salt Lake City jail. Teresa admitted to 2 murders to avoid execution. For survival, Teresa Knorr pleaded guilty to all counts of cruelly mistreating and murdering her children, Susan and Sheila. Teresa's clemency appeal won. William, her son, was acquitted, while Robert got a longer murder sentence. William had childhood trauma therapy. Teresa Knorr, 80, will be parole eligible in 2027 after serving life. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon.